in advance.
I don't forgive you.
I wouldn't expect you to. I apologize to Christian, not you.
Right, we are live, testing our live broadcasting system in real time. The cat is lying on top of the mouse.
Your stream just start with me antagonizing Alex, because that's on
The
brand.
cat is
so.
here, lying on the mouse, so that I have limited control. He looks very pleased with himself.
That's it. That's the stream.
That's the stream.
I mean, cats featured pretty heavily in the campaign.
I'm scared to try and adjust Emily's position and size because it keeps constantly glitching anyway. I'm going to do it. There we go.
I'm going to become tiny. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm monitoring this as best I can. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel after months and months and months and months. You have some of us were filming for the other show, but yeah, Jacinta, this was like feels like it was approaching a year ago that we filmed this.
Yeah, well, I remember it was really cold, and right now it's really hot. So
Yeah.
It was December. I only specifically remember because I remember it was like the day before we had a rehearsal for a show that me, Alex, and Jacinta were in, and so we were running lines, and that's the only reason I remember when this was.
Yeah.
Christian and I were just crying in the corner. We were just like improvising our own stuff.
You were just wishing that you were in a sapphic Christmas movie.
I always do.
I'm saying.
It was so good.
Good.
Right, I have got, I believe, the chat open so I can monitor the chat now. But yeah, we are. Oh my god, I've never. This is straining my system. Right, so we have got a full Skype link set up here on the OBS that's streaming live to YouTube. We've not done this before. I haven't done this before. So there are some people here who were in Edge of Chaos, which had a similar setup. If any of you saw that, but yeah, it's exciting, fun times. And this is in lieu of there being like another episode, because with the 3 parts of the Fate Accelerated, the Skeleton Crew game. Jacinta, why have you gone smaller? There's a Skeleton Crew game.
I am not alone.
Jacinta's just off into the woods. She's just slowly
Going back to her trailer.
Yeah.
Back into the glen with the flying horse. The 3 part, we had little 3 parts that we shot. Before that, I think we actually shot the Good Society after, although I put it out first. But we did shoot another Fate game before that, the weird time traveling one, which Emily was.
I'm so sad that
it
later
was just had so many technical faults. Like one of the cameras was glitching constantly, and the audio was really bad. And we never finished it. So yeah, it was just kind of a mess. Where Emily was a survivor of the Titanic. Face was Face was Billy the Kid's brother, if I recall.
Yes. And Vic was a Roman senator?
One of the senators that
Yeah, it
stabbed Caesar.
Caesar.
Totally stabbed Caesar.
And we had Fiona on as the 4th member of the Sugar Babes, who was fired before they got famous.
That's amazing.
Babes.
I keep saying that to my colleagues at work, and all of them are like, are you making fun? I'm like, no, don't. If Fiona were here, she'd love that.
She'd get it.
She'd get it. But alas, she's not.
Only the cool kids. You know, we're so hipster that we know the Christian's brain lore before it even drops.
Exactly.
The punchline comes before the joke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To get to the other side. Wait.
Do you know what the worst thing is?
I'm
about
like a
time
big rock?
travel jokes?
What's the worst thing about time travel jokes, Alex?
You already did the joke.
Oh. Well, I fell for it. And everyone on the internet
I got it. I saw it coming.
And you know what? I feel like that's a really good summary of the day. Hey, does anyone want to try going into work from 7 a.m. and teaching children all day in a heat wave? Anyone want to try that?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
No, I will pass, but thank you for the offer.
That's fair. I did like that joke, but I'm filled with primal rage at having fallen for it. Kudos to you.
Oh dear. But yeah, once we'd figured out all the tech stuff, we got this one shot.
Everybody, I present my brand.
Yes. So yeah, like I said, once we figured out all the tech stuff, we got this one shot, the Skeleton Crew, which ended up being 3 parts. It could have been 4 parts, but we had it actually glitched. I know people who have watched it will notice that in the second part we had a massive glitch about halfway through, and one of the camera footage of Emily and Vic's camera footage was unusable. So it's just a carefully chosen still. It's a good still. I took a while to pick it.
Right.
Just scanning through, like, what's a good freeze frame for these two? Action shots. Unfortunately, but yeah, that's other than that. I think it came out really well. I think it was a good fun game. But I did want to talk to you guys about it because some of you hadn't played Fate before. I've had them to say that only Vic had played Fate before, and I just want to talk about.
I played it in the aforementioned not well filmed, but yeah, that was the only time.
But yeah, I just wanted to get everyone's take on it, everyone's feelings, and how they remember it. Like I said, it was a long time ago, but it's been a lot of fun to edit and watch back. And there's a whole ton of reasons why it's only just recently gone out, which I won't bore you with. But yeah, how did everyone find it?
I love Fate, and I want to play more.
Hopefully, we will.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it great?
Yeah. It was really, really fun. The thing, I didn't actually remember that much of it until I rewatched it, and then it all came flooding back to me. But I think...
Yeah, no. Literally, all I remembered going into it was Dr. Patience Whispy.
Yes.
Obviously. Star of the show.
And Peatbog's Peatblog. That was it. I did not remember anything else. And so I was watching it just being like, oh yeah, that happened. Oh yeah, that happened. It was great.
It was so nice. It was like experiencing it all over again. The only thing I remembered was that I wore a saucepan at one point, hence why I'm wearing a saucepan.
Yeah, that's why.
That's why.
Yeah. I made us a handy GIF out of that moment because it just when I was editing it, I was like, "That's too funny to not." It's just the way the delivery of the line. I would like to remember that I am wearing a saucepan on my head, and then everyone cracks up. None of us saw it coming because we'd all forgotten that was.
We'd all forgotten,
especially because it's from the episode prior.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
you're like, I know I haven't mentioned it at all today, but I do have a saucepan on my head.
So interesting, research. I actually had to try quite a lot of saucepans on my head before I found one that didn't immediately fall off.
The right size.
Yeah,
that's more of a pot than a pan, I would say.
Oh, now getting real technical.
Or is that my American showing through? Is that an American thing?
Maybe. Does a pan have a handle, like a longer handle?
Yeah.
I think you can make the argument either way.
Handle,
and honestly, I think from what I remember from the game, if Ratman says it's a pan, we all agree it's a pan.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Camellia.
Ratman.
Just be like, sure, honey, as he comes in with a bird's nest on his head one day, like, look at my new pan. Yeah, great pan.
Yeah.
Sure, Ratman, sure.
Exactly.
So as we've touched on, that was it was the previous episode, but we filmed it all in an afternoon, basically. Even if I guess it isn't obvious from the fact that none of us changed clothes. We just wear all the same clothes for 3 weeks. It's that's what a normal person does.
They're committed to the bit.
Yeah.
So we did the first part, which was us creating the game. Then we broke for lunch. And we ordered, I can't remember, we had probably ordered pizza or something, that's what we generally go to. But whatever it was, we broke for lunch. I made a handful of notes, very few notes. I really should have made some more. And then we rolled straight into the game after that. And the only notes that I really made were, because most of it was in the setup, was that the cats are doing something under the cafe, and that there was going to be a Egyptian kind of angle because cats and ghosts and the dead. It kind of made sense. But really, that's kind of all I wrote down. Like, you can tell, I think, that by the number of things that don't really go anywhere. Like the cats gathering the metal in the kitchen. I had no idea why I was saying that out loud. The game was going. I'm just talking. And that doesn't go anywhere.
It's just something unsettling.
Yeah.
It's definitely. I can definitely see why you like Fate, Christian, because the much looser nature suddenly of the accelerated version definitely fits your style as a DM, or as a GM, because I know you obviously you do prepare and you do make notes, but you're also very not to use this not necessarily this exactly, but you're also very much the type, I feel, to go like the players are like, ooh, what if that runic symbol means this? And you're just like, oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I feel like Christian very much ascribes to the philosophy, not so much of yes and, but yeah, sure. Like any sort of player says anything, it's like, yeah, sure,
Yeah,
okay.
that works.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
That's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah. Which Fate lends itself to really well.
Yeah.
It definitely fits, like Alex says, it does definitely fits my kind of brain the most of any games, and D&D just sort of doesn't. Not that I complain about D&D a lot on this channel, but like, I don't hate D&D. It's fine. It's just like there's a lot of moving parts to it that I'm like can't be bothered to deal with.
Yeah.
So you're saying that Fate is very suited to Christian's brain?
Exactly. They said the name.
I was really interested in that video.
So what were you saying, Vic?
That video you put out. No, it's all good. You guys want to do any more references? I think my audio is on a bit of a delay, so I might just have to interrupt people. I do apologise. I was really interested, Christian, in that video that you put out talking about like improvising storylines. And as someone who's done improv for a long time, I really, really enjoy it when GMs take like a collaborative approach to stories. But I think you have to go into it in a really prepared way as a player. I think there are two sort of approaches generally to being a player on the whole, and it's people who really want a part in creating that world and will give you that backstory list of like, this is the deity I want to follow and this is a settlement that I want to be from, and like I think that speaks to a kind of deep urge to be a collaborative storyteller, and I think Fate really suits to that. But the other version is, I think, a player who wants their GM to appear just like God, and just like they want to feel like they are fighting a battle against something that is really like complex and pre-planned, and like almost the victory over a well-planned narrative by unplanned decisions can in itself be a challenge that some players really relish. I think Fate definitely lends itself to both, but it just sort of depends what your preparatory style is.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I would like to think that I am good enough at the former that I sort of fake the latter. Like it looks very well thought out and structured, but I'm just that good at just thinking on my feet.
It's really responsive. I feel like it's a very responsive way to run a game, and it makes it easier as the GM, right? Like we've all been stuck as forever GMs, and actually at some point it just stops being fun. And actually being able to be like, I'll just go in with a couple of concepts and respond to whatever my players want is a really sustainable way of doing it.
That's cool. I think like rewatching it, I think because obviously when I was playing, I was sort of very focused on following the story and like being in it, being in the moment. But then like actually rewatching, I was like extra impressed with you, Christian, because I was like, wow, you are literally like making a story on the spot. And I know we're all making the story, but you're kind of like guiding the story and responding to what the players make of the story. I don't know. I was like extra impressed watching it back.
That's another reason I like Fate, because there's some of that control can be in the player's hands. You've got your fate points that you can burn to be like, you can declare like a massive story detail with those. Like the players can really. I think you guys ever really did. You did a little bit in the big show, But again, you could have taken so much more advantage of that fate point economy to just spend the thing and just like declare a massive story event. There's a lot of them. I think if you get, it's quite like playing with other fellow GMs who are prepared to like just roll with something and just you have to. But it's difficult to trust that your GM is going to be like okay with that. And a lot, some of you guys haven't played with me a huge amount. Alex and Emily, you have played with me quite a bit over the years, but Vic and Jacinta, we've never really played together before. So you've got to get into that comfort spot where you're not going to piss off the GM if you do this thing.
Yeah, I think
It's interesting, Christian, hearing you talk about that idea of you can use the fate points to make a big declarative story beat, and I'm conscious enough myself of, particularly when I'm a player, of not hogging the limelight, because I don't know if other people felt this, but when I was watching it back recently, I'm very aware of whenever I was speaking, I felt like my inner critic was going like, okay, come on, Alex, get to the point. And so it's interesting that that you say that, because I always feel, particularly when I'm a player in games like this, that I don't want to take up more than my fair share of the limelight, and declaring a big sudden, changing story beat, like I'm using a fate point to declare that a plane crashes. We've literally never mentioned planes before. Why are you doing this? It almost feels a bit too much, interestingly. I think that comes from my actor sensibilities, in that, like, collaborating on a show, it's like, okay, I'm free to offer my ideas and offer my interpretations and so forth, but ultimately there's a director, and the director, directs and has the sort of final say to stop it just becoming a cook pot of everything. So, yeah.
I feel like those declarations are definitely a tool, and I think you can, I totally agree with you, Alex, because I'm also conscious that I'm someone who enjoys like pushing narrative and offering ideas and collaborating and kind of leaping in on things, but I've also had to be conscious of other players at the table, making sure to bring them in and making sure that that's an inclusive thing. And I think declaring a story beat or declaring a big world-changing action seems to me like a tool that can be used to help a narrative or bring people in or celebrate someone else's choices, as much as like just having a character is something that doesn't necessarily avoid somebody like taking up a load of space in terms of airspace at a table. I think they're all tools that can be used to like celebrate other people's decisions and choices and yes and them. I think that fate points to me are definitely a tool that I think you're right, you should be conscious of, but I don't think they're any more risky in terms of occupying too much airtime at a table or limelight in a story. I don't think there's any more risk of that than the risk of giving somebody a character to make or dice to roll.
Yeah, I think also the thing to keep in mind is that the fate points, like in D&D, there is very much, I'm here to win this encounter. What do I need to do to kill the bad guy and lose the fewest hit points and X, Y, Z? Whereas in Fate, I feel it is very much more about, we're here to have a good time and tell a fun story. And I'm going to take the consequences. And sure, I'm going to spend...
Oh. I think we lost Emily.
Oh no.
We've got a good freeze frame though.
It's
got a really good intense freeze frame.
Yeah, this is great. Edit this into
the narrative. And I think it's just... Yeah, it's about like using it for something that will be interesting and using it as, okay, I'm going to use this fate button or this fate point to win.
Yes. I agree. I don't know when in the past you said that, Emily, but I agree.
Yeah, we've lost you a little bit, Emily, I think, but we'll hopefully we'll get you back shortly.
And you made an excellent point.
Oh, can you hear me? Or you just can't see me?
We can hear you. We're not sure how much of a delay though, because we feel like we heard all of what you just said, but in like weird static blocks.
When you hear us, say the words butternut squash, and we'll test.
Butternut squash?
Oh,
Yeah,
no delay.
there
We
we go.
just have no video currently. Fair enough.
Fine.
Oh,
Not
cool.
on-
It's fine then.
Not on the stream anyway. I have both.
Oh, is it, Skype's okay, but the stream doesn't like you, Emily.
I'm seeing Emily fine on Skype,
Yeah.
but not on the not on your shared
You've offended YouTube.
OBS.
You've offended.
Obs, thou art a
Yeah, you've
fickle
offended
mistress.
OBS or YouTube at some point.
Or
in the
am
past
I
life.
just so small that you can't see me?
That's very possible.
In fairness, actually looking at it, I think Emily is actually like a tiny sliver.
She got
Really?
smurfed. We're seeing this live. She got
Oh, dear.
smurfed.
Honey, I Shrunk the Emily.
Just trapped in the corner there.
It's more like honey, I squashed the Emily.
There are some creepy like eyes in the background of this forest background that we've got going on. They could be
Yeah.
up to some
was-
nefarious thing.
I was
Yeah.
If you-
Were they there at the start?
It's me. I'm the eyes.
Ah,
Ooh.
I think
I could really lean into the ghost vibes with this. Now that you can't see me.
yeah, I think Emily's been
absolutely
shrunk.
loved it.
Yeah, there it
Tiny
is. Yeah,
sliver.
you've got it, Christian.
Oh,
She'll be
Oh.
back.
There you go. Absolutely
I'm gonna
loved that we're
try and
like,
press on the
oh,
window.
Emily could be these. Emily could be these
Oh,
weird
wow,
eyes,
there
and
you
you're
are.
immediately like, ooh.
Oh, I'm going in the wrong direction. Wait.
Oh, she's doing. Yeah, that's weirdly that's actually working.
You're welcome.
That was very strange that worked. Oh, you're back.
Making OBS workers about to leave.
Oh
Oh my God, funny again.
no! Oh dear. You got
Yeah, absolutely smurfed. Yeah, absolutely
excellent
squished.
pot hair there. Just into.
Yeah, that saucepan was getting cold.
I imagine that was getting hot. You've committed to that to longer than I thought you would, because that must have been a very hot
Thank you.
piece of metal on
Thank
your head
you.
in this
Would you
heat.
say that she was
I
a
really tried.
pothead?
Yeah.
You might, but we'd never.
Ah.
Anyway.
Anyway,
Marijuana.
that was a really good point you made, in spite of interruptions.
Whatever it was,
Um,
half an hour ago, before we started making puns.
I thought I was speaking very intelligently, but
You were.
okay.
No, I think it's like I agree. I have some of the same. I think some of the same anxieties as Alex about being like, oh, I don't want to like hijack the story. But I think like Vic and Emily, you're both saying is like it's like realizing what would serve the story or what would make the story fun or what would bring a character in more or bring another character's idea in more or whatever, and then and kind of doing it in that way. And I think that's a really good way of looking at it. It's just incredibly collaborative.
I really like the phrase, Vic, that you used, which is celebrating other people's decisions.
Yes.
Mhm.
Improv, baby.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's the most fun thing about collaborative storytelling is somebody goes, hey, what if I was a weird rat man? And all of us immediately just look directly at Jacinta and go, yes, and you're weird rat man. Like, I love that. And I feel like that's where the most fun in tabletops comes from. Like, if you're someone who likes wargaming, fine. If you're someone who likes competitive games, that's fine. Even when I'm playing board games, I much prefer to be collaborative because then we can all celebrate the same idea and enjoy it. And it makes that person
Yeah.
feel great, but it also helps you as a player practice your listening
Right.
skills. And then you can play the game. Because it shouldn't just be 4 people or 5 people, how many, like, soliloquizing at each other. It should be everybody listening and collaborating. And
Completely. And it's like my favorite like moments of collaboration that I can remember from having rewatched it was obviously Dr. Patience Wispy.
obviously.
I forgot. I
Honestly.
forgot what a slow burn that was. Like I thought, oh yeah, we came up with that immediately. No, that took hours of slowly creating that character until we got to the final name.
Uh-huh.
It was so
I
good.
forgot.
And she didn't even appear until the last session.
It was amazing. It was like
She is
the
amazing.
climax. She's amazing.
I
And
just
how,
Yeah, I just remember speaking to Vic later and just being like, yeah, so I wanted a wife, so I used a fate point to get myself a wife. And it didn't even occur to me that wait, Christian is going to have to play my wife. I like just met him. Well, we're in love now.
I feel like there's no better summary of like like warning labels that are put on the outside of cats' cages when they're in like rescue centers or the vets. I feel like my warning label would be warning, we'll use narrative device to create lesbian romances for self.
Yeah.
I should come with that disclaimer, Christian. I'm sorry. But speaking of somebody who is really new to your style of DMing, I've really, really enjoyed playing the game. And I really like your style, Christian. And I just like the fact that like you were very up to, and obviously we had a discussion in our before our session 0 about like comfort levels and safety levels, and is anyone does anyone want to exclude any topics or whatever. But I felt like the way that their affection and their romance was played was super lovely, and it was just really nice to see an example and to participate in an example of like an established romance in a tabletop that wasn't really changing with somebody that I didn't know that well at the time, but I just felt like it was so fun and it was exactly what I wanted. So big props to you, Kay, which is now a nickname that I've just invented for you. I don't think we're there yet, me and Christian, but I've just called him Kay on live stream. So hey,
I can live with Kay. I don't like Chris for whatever reason, but Kay's fine with me.
Neither. Nice, right?
Yeah, it's. I forgot what I was going to say then. We got into a nickname question.
Jacinta was talking, and then we went off on a Patience Whiffsby tangent.
Yeah, of course. That was well earned. The one of the other things was Alex Warren's endless clones with like Warren Bravo and Warren Charlie, and they just kept going. And I just really loved that. And that was sort of like started off as just like like a sort of small element of it, and then it just got more and more like incorporated and more silly, and I really like that. And then obviously Pete Boggs.
I honestly don't know how the story would have concluded if we hadn't made that Pete Bog pun, because that dominated the entire like final act of the game was just dominated by Pete Boggs. I honestly don't know what would have happened without him. Because none of that existed. None of Pete Boggs, the Manticore, none of that was in my head at all. I didn't know what the cat was about.
Yeah.
Because the first part of the actual game was pretty much all in one location. Like there was some introductions and so forth, but it was all pretty much in the cat cafe, in and around the cat cafe. But then the second half, we're jumping all over the place. We're in the woods. Then we're at
the professor's house, wasn't it?
The professor's house, and then
the Wispy Bucket residence.
The Wispy Bucket residence. Yes, thank you.
It's Bouquet.
It's not.
And then we're calling that.
And then we go out to the road to find that body in the truck, and then back to Pete Boggs. Etc. etc. So I can't remember where I was going with that, but that was another thing I noticed. We were jumping all over the place.
I think that was necessary though, because we needed that slow build, because we were sort of getting used to each other and learning the elements of the game. What have you? The cat just kicked something off the desk. He's just stretching out. So look in there, just stretching out like he owns the place.
I mean, he does.
But
I love him. He's so orange.
Oh god, I've messed my camera up now. But yes, we're sort of getting used to each other and understanding the game, and then really once we left the cat cafe, we kind of got into it. I think a bit smoothly. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting about some elements, because I think you spent a fate point to get Dr. Patience Whiffsby into the scene. You'd already created her, right?
Yeah.
And so when she appeared, I was like, oh, she'll come in. She might be useful to the scene. But because you spent a fate point, I'll have that she knows something. She knows something useful. I didn't know what it was, but I figured she would know something useful. And if you started to flounder, I would have her say it. And that was when you guys were trying to figure out what to do, I'd say, okay, well, she knows that there's this crashed van.
Oh, there's a dead body in
I know, she was so catchy. She's like, oh yeah, there's Lori in the woods.
It took a while, but that was the payoff to you spending the fate point, really. It just took a while to get there, because I wasn't sure what it was going to be. I just knew she would have to be useful in some way. So yeah, that's kind of another insight into sort of how I run games, is that I can seed something that I know, I trust myself that I will figure out what that means later.
It's interesting because obviously there's always that trope of the DM PC, where the DM puts a character into the party to either fulfill some sort of weird power fantasy or to push people into the right direction, and ostensibly it could have been that, because I have no doubt that Dr. Patience Whiffsby could have killed us all 50 different ways with her thumb before we even knew it.
Yeah.
But like yeah,
foreplay.
So
I love my
that reminds me of our honeymoon.
when she fought off all those
ninjas.
That should have been a first.
So many bodies into the river in advance of Venice's sinking by 20 years.
But as in, Dr. Patience Whiffsby could very easily have been the DMPC, but given that we had, that Vic had invented her and then we had, built on that, it's, we were like, yes, no, we have this, we have this Soviet sleeper agent that people are just ignoring the fact that she's obviously a Soviet sleeper agent. So
She rides a motorbike, Alex. What more are we supposed to? Well, I don't understand your point.
My point being is that we didn't have to. I'm not denying that in any shape or form.
She's my hot wife. Where's the scrutiny?
On a side note, I did love. There's a moment in the last episode where you, Vic, go like, "I love my hot wife," and I'm like, "I'd like a hot wife." Then you should have spent a fate point for it.
It's very good.
You wanted tech. I bought a hot wife.
Yeah, I remember saying, I think it must have been off camera, but saying something along the lines of, "Man, I gave myself a husband and I could have had a hot wife."
Yeah. But
Rookie
yeah,
mistake.
it did it. We all accepted the presence of that incredibly powerful NPC, and it. None of us were worried about it.
Yeah.
But I feel like she also kind of informed the genre of the story, because I think pitching the mood is very difficult when it comes to a campaign that is being improvised. Actually, Christian, I mean, maybe it's not for you, but the vibe of the Skeleton Crew is very different from the vibe of the big campaign. And we sort of went into the big campaign with some idea of what vibe we wanted. I know we had a little bit of a chat and setup about kind of the vibes we wanted, but it would have been easy for this to be sort of like a spooky, scary Halloween night, sort of like unsettling exploration of like bodily autonomy and death and what it means to sort of control yourself and others. But I do think that her presence and a couple of other experiences, like the fact that it was in a cat cafe, that sort of informed it as a little bit more Halloween-y, ooky dooky. And I feel like that was really informative, and everybody just sort of took that and celebrated it.
Yeah, well, Alex's opening kind of concept was Scooby-Doo. So it's like the trappings of horror, but you guys aren't necessarily in any if you're in danger, it's probably cartoonish kind of danger.
That was really fun.
We're not in the the Saw universe or something.
Oh, I don't want to play that game.
No.
I think our all instant reactions to it is also why that game went the way it did. Is that we're all like, oh, scary? No, don't want that.
Let's scuba instead.
Oh, gory.
Yeah, I'd rather be funny.
I've hidden the key to your trailer in the woods, inside this gorgeous Soviet sleeper agent. You're gonna have to. Oh, she's extracted. Oh, she's killing me. I don't know how she figured out who I am. Oh, first your Whiffsby. End of story. 3-minute movie if Patience Whiffsby was involved. You know that meme of Lord of the Rings if Frodo had a gun. Lord of the Rings if Merry Pippin had a gun. It's Skeleton Crew. The Saw movies if Patience Whiffsby was a character.
That would be so much better.
That'd be so much better. I'd watch that.
Should just start writing a series of novels about Dr. Patience Whitby.
I mean, I don't want to spoil too much, but I do think that there is some sort of like ancestral similarity between Patience Whitby and Coria James.
Yeah,
there's got to be some link there.
Characters, different
hey, buddy, why would you roast me? Why would you roast me like this? People are watching this in public. Why would you roast me like this?
Why is that a roast? I love both of them.
Actually, yeah, that's valid. That's a choice celebration, not a roast. Yeah, okay, valid.
I am shameless in my love for Dr. Patience Whitby and Coria James.
If they fought, no, I'm not even going to ask the question. I can't imagine it.
I mean, no, trying to get to spoilers for the.
Text me later.
Trying to get to spoilers for the season 1 of the show, but yeah, that's another kind of badass NPC that was entirely your creation. Like that, I didn't really have much to do with that. That was your, in your character concept.
Spoiler.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
But yeah, it's an interesting one.
It's fun one.
Again, not to. I was going to say on the note of like, where we mentioned. I think earlier we were talking about like my notes and stuff, and Alex said, "I'm sure you take notes," and I'm pretty sure Emily like had a face because she doubts that I take notes because I don't take notes. And slight spoilers for the main show. For the final recording, for like, I think the last 2 episodes maybe, or whatever it is, I don't know if it'll make it into the edit, but I showed up, and one of the first things I said, because somebody remind me of the NPC names, because I didn't bring any notes with me, and I also forgot to bring the Fate book with me. So I ran your last 2 episodes of the big campaign without my notes and without the book, because I left them at home.
I take it all back. Christian, you're the most unprepared GM I've ever played with.
I mean, it's just one of those things that just would not have occurred to me to have picked up those things, and we roll with that. I don't think you would notice. I don't know whether I'll probably edit out the fact that I talk about that at the beginning of the episode, but yeah, I don't think anyone you will notice a difference because that's just how I work in a weird way. I work in a very strange way.
Makes sense.
Hey, if it works, it works.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
My brain doesn't do that.
Mm.
I need to write things down.
Yeah.
I used to be able to do that. I do that with shows, but if it's a long, ongoing campaign, I have learnt from experience that I must sit down. The first thing I have to do after I say goodbye to everybody is I have to sit down and write a little summary paragraph. Otherwise, in 2 weeks, I will have forgotten. And then my players will have to remind me of all the things.
Mm.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I write down names. That's one of the few things I like around NPC and place names, because those are so random.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I do think that. Oh, sorry, Jacinta, you go ahead.
No, go for it, Vic. No.
Well, I just want to say one more thing on that. I think that does speak to a kind of habit in some people who, again, get caught forever GMing, or you come up with ideas and worlds and campaigns that you never actually get to play. But people tend to write so much around, like the number of world building documents that I've read that have been spectacular and incredibly detailed. And if you were setting it as a like a campaign guide, I think that's brilliant. But when you're creating a narrative, I think, Christian, your sort of note-taking has like a moral message in a way, which is you don't have to name and detail every deity. You don't have to name and detail every location and continent. You just have vague concepts and then go for it and build it as you go, like the Wallace and Gromit gif of building the tracks as you go.
Name it if it becomes relevant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, just tend to go on, God.
Yeah, no, I was so I mean, I guess with any like RPG game, it's like it's kind of so in the moment that it is very difficult to remember it afterwards, because you're kind of just like you haven't rehearsed it. And I think even more so something like Fate Accelerated, because it's not even a prepared campaign, so it's just like I guess it's like I was surprised at how much I'd forgotten, because it felt so kind of like it was like the whole world while we were doing it, and then suddenly it's like, oh, I remember nothing. So yeah, that's kind of the beauty of it. I think that it's like so in the moment, but also it's good that we did it in one day, because I definitely wouldn't have remembered it like if we'd come back the following week.
True.
But also, speaking of writing things down, I really, really, really enjoyed that we had whiteboards.
Oh, that was really fun.
Yes.
I think
that
that should be a part of every tabletop experience. Just give your players whiteboards.
Yes.
Especially
Absolutely.
when it means Jacinta can draw a wonderful winged horse.
Exactly.
Even though that never comes into the
There were
plot.
too many things. There were
No,
too many
spoilers.
things.
I know.
Spoilers for Neutromancer in the chat who hasn't finished it yet. I'm so sorry. I just ruined that for you.
I literally should have at the end just spent a point and flown away on a horse, but
The same thing kind of happened in the previous one as well, the one that's not going to go out. I think it was Vic's suggestion, which was you guys could manifest abilities or like something about your like the manifestations of the soul in a kind of like Dark Materials maybe kind of way. And I had sort of in the back of my mind, oh yeah, I know how I'll fit that in, but then I just sort of forgot about it because there was so many other things happening. But yeah, it's.
I think we covered that with technology. We covered that in this episode. You'll never see. Sorry, guys.
But yeah, so something kind of gets left out. I can't immediately think off the top of my head if any of that happened for anything in the big show because I think we had enough time to kind of cover everything. But yeah, there's always going to be elements that just kind of fall by the wayside.
Yeah, I think that watching it back, the one of the first big ideas was the clones. As in, I want a world with clones. And although that was certainly part of the Skeleton Crew adventure, to me it almost felt like a secondary consideration almost. As a.
But you had so many clones.
Sorry?
You had so many clones.
It was more like a superpower than like an actual like a world-changing event.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a thrown in, sort of. I don't want to say throwaway, but it was a quote unquote throwaway. Almost, side thing. I feel rather than a core concept, the kind that one might see in like a trailer or an elevator pitch or something like that.
Watching it back, I do think that I would like to. It's the one thing I'd like to have explored more if we had like more time. When I was editing it back, I kind of feel like wish we'd had gone deeper into the lore of the clones.
It sort of felt like the hook to the overarching narrative. And when we revisit the Skeleton Crew next time, this time we've just seen a glimpse of the clones and the world, but we're not really questioning and interrogating the nature of the world. But then we know it's kind of like in a fantasy series where halfway through the first book, they meet a dying knight with a magical elemental sword. And it's like, okay, well, by the end of book 4, we are going to have all of the magic elemental weapons. And we are going to be seeing our heroes use them. It sort of felt like one of those things. I think being okay with leaving some threads untied is actually something that we talk about actually in improv a lot. I do a lot of like narrative long form shows, and it's really surprising that if you don't bring it back in the final scene, more often than not, your audience isn't going to mention it because they're going to be so excited by the finale that you do agree on. And sometimes it can be way more rewarding to conclude like everybody digs the same hole, everybody follows the same strand of narrative, everybody concludes the same plot point, instead of having somebody or multiple people going, oh, and then, oh, actually, what about, and then. And I feel like that can often pull the focus away. So I quite liked the fact that the clones were sort of left unsettled, and then people can make up their own fan theories. Hey, people can make fanfic and explore that in more depth.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was kind of like if you write a first draft of a story, that's rarely going to be the finished draft. And I feel like almost us all putting forward our ideas for what we wanted was kind of like the draft, and then we sort of wrote it, and then the ideas like developed or changed or manifested in slightly different ways. Because like it was going to be about like there were going to be ghosts everywhere, and there were ghosts, but there were ghost cats. So it was all like it was like that thing changed quite a lot. And then the horse was like a kind of background myth mythology but didn't actually ever transpire. And obviously, yeah, the clones were like were happening, but they weren't like completely like solidified how it worked. But I think like it was, so I think that's kind of the beauty of it. Like everyone brings forward an idea, and then a world is created out of that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be rigidly the idea we started with.
Yeah, I also think it's interesting that, like, obviously, if this were a longer campaign, if we had sequels to this, there would absolutely be more exploration of the clones themselves. But I think, if I remember correctly, like, my very first pitch for the clones was, clones exist, and they're not a big deal. They're like smart.
Yes, exactly.
Everyone has them. We don't make a big deal about, I have a phone, and it does this and this and this. You just, whatever. You pick someone up, you ring them, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that is very then funny that it did end up being exactly like that we just used them. We're like, yeah, we'll send out our clones, duh. And like, it's never addressed as weird or like really explored. It's just, well, yeah, of course, Warren, he goes over and asks someone to shoot him. So then we bring out the next clone. Like, that's just what you do.
That was a joke.
So many things were jokes that ended up being very important, though. That was the kind of game it was.
Like Pete Boggs.
Oh,
and that's all because of you, Alex. You just said, I hate that guy or something.
You made an off-the-cuff joke.
And we all just went with it.
You made an off-the-cuff joke, and it became the entire conclusion of the story. But it did.
That's just my love of that's just me seeing anything that's even tangentially a pun and making a joke out of it.
Yeah, I love it.
It isn't, the clones are interesting, like, because mechanically they kind of became just a thing that was negligible. Like how in D&D you never feel the need to explain when your character is and isn't wearing their armor. It's just like, yeah, my character's got their armor on. You just had a shower. No, we're in combat now. I don't need to dictate to you when I take my armor on and off. So it's just kind of like it was a thing that you just sort of had.
What DMs do? Anyway.
In LARP we have the concept of, so in a massive festival LARP that I play, we have the concept of things being below the abstraction layer, of like the fate of every individual person in this world that we're experiencing is actually too deep in. We can't afford that minutiae of detail, and it takes the fun out of the game. So there are ways for the general population to communicate with us as the heroes in different ways. But like the exact amount that your character earns between summits or whatever, it's below the abstraction layer. You can roleplay it if you want. You can have a headcanon if you want. But know that, the name of your ship or the names of each individual captain in your mercenary banner, that's really fun for you to build. But for the general system, it is below the abstraction layer. And I think that's fun in the same way that like we never say, and then our characters take a piss every 4 hours. Like it's just it's just accepted. It's taken as it's below the abstraction layer. We don't need to worry about it.
Unless
so
you
I think
need
that's
to do it for a plot point and sneak into a bathroom. Anyway,
the one everyone always says is if everyone remembers the show 24, which the concept was that it literally takes place the series 24 episodes is in real time. It's like, why did none of the characters go to the toilet? For 24 hours, not one of them had to pee.
Well, actually, it wasn't quite real time because each episode was only about 40 minutes long.
Conceit was that. The conceit was that.
It only cut out bathroom breaks.
Every time we went to commercial break.
Use the bathroom 20 minutes every hour. It's concerning.
That's the thing that I refer to as Clark Kenting. It's when people question, like, it's when people are able to suspend their disbelief and be like, oh yeah, no, Superman's an alien. He lives on Earth. He, has all these powers. He can fly. Blah blah blah. But people are fine with that. But they can't believe that people can't tell the difference between Superman and Clark Kent just because Clark Kent wears glasses.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm still caught up on the idea of a third of his life being Jack Bauer just pissing like a racehorse.
That's what he spends. That's what he spends the next day doing.
I'll be back in 19 minutes and 30 seconds. But you're right, Alex. You're right.
Yeah.
Full credits. It's gonna take a while.
20 minutes of credits. Okay, we're back.
Well, while I've got...
Tell me where the bathroom is!
Or I'll shoot this kid! Jack Bauer, that sort of thing. Psychotic.
Go to the ad break! Go to the ad break now!
But yeah, off the topic of the show, while we've got some fellow DMs and GMs here. I'd love to hear your guys' kind of philosophy and how you like to run and what your kind of prep. How much it differs from mine. I imagine quite a lot, because I don't know anybody that can work quite as slapdash as I can. But yeah, I throw it to Vic. Vic, what's your style more akin to?
Fully roasting me there. I think I definitely do more prep than you, Christian, but I don't think that's necessarily a surprise.
No one does less prep than me. Let's put it there.
It's true, and I love that works for your style. But for me, because for anyone who doesn't know, a lot of the stuff I do in performing is improv, and it's made up and it's collaborative and it's spontaneous. It's the first and last time we see that. And so the joy of that is getting to do that with groups of people on stage. And so when I'm creating a tabletop game, I sort of want to add in a little bit more of the element of making it seem like a more concrete world. Because when I was talking about those two types of players earlier, I definitely oscillate between what type I am depending on the day. And I like giving my players the opportunity to, in effect, run up against something that I can say, no, it's been threaded through this narrative here, and here. In terms of actual prep, I have learned from running Vicky's World RPG, which is a game I ran for a few years in podcast form with some wonderful comedians. It's really useful when you're trying to do a conclusion of a long-running campaign to be able to go back to your notes from the very start and be like, remember this NPC? Well, they're coming back. And especially for me, where I have, if I turn sideways, you can see sort of daylight through my ear with the amount of brain retention that I have on a daily basis. So I find it really useful to make notes. I think one thing that I really enjoy doing in order to make things quite atmospheric in my games, and I sort of developed it as a podcast habit, and now I just sort of do it, is I write little chunks of narration when I want to describe an environment in a really immersive way, or describe an NPC, because I want the players to feel like it's a really solid world and they can interact in lots of different ways. I want them to feel really immersed, and that's definitely not to say that you can't do that with minimal prep games. I think that you definitely can. I've definitely felt really immersed in your games, Christian, but I really like having that a little bit more prep. So I do like, I don't necessarily make everything, and if you have ever played with me, you will know that I am usually frantically scribbling right up until the start of the game, and sometimes during the game. But I do like having, some notes on previous things. One thing that I don't often generate is too much detail about NPCs. I usually choose, so if we're talking D&D, which I have run a lot, but any tabletop really, I tend to have name, pronouns, kind of a fantasy race if there is one, and then just a motive. And actually how they interact with the players is entirely dependent on how the players interact with them. And I tend to go with what's funniest, because I need that kind of prep, because I am so impulsive as a GM. I will do what is funniest, and that is my favorite thing to do at the table. And you may have noticed that doing it for the bit and being a bit of a chuckle fuck is actually my favorite thing. So there are a load of in jokes in Vicky's World that probably should have ended sooner than they did, but because we were all just assholes and creating this echo chamber of stupidity. But also I love that, because that lets you celebrate, it lets you collaborate. There was a point at which we just ended up dressing one of the characters in just entirely in fruit, because she rolled a 2 on a fashion roll. Everyone in the City of Cats canonically wears belts below their butts. Just all of these little things, because I really like having to conclude this little rant of mine, I really like having the solid established framework, because I see it like a joke. I see it, the more work you put into making your setup elegant and efficient and immersive and engaging to your players, the better the payoff for me and my style, the better the payoff of my punchline is going to be. Because then people, I feel, will enjoy messing around and putting people in fruit, or finding a fish that promises to grant you wishes and not trusting it at all. And then the funnier the payoff is, because they get to play off that. So I craft my campaigns like the setup to jokes, and then I let my players create punchlines. And sometimes the setup is efficient and sometimes it is detailed.
That's cool. I'm obviously a bit more loose than that, but I do like the philosophy of everything is something, or everything could be something. So if I introduce something new, I'd give it like a thing, just a thing. And if the players go like, "Oh, the thing," I'm like, "Okay, I better build on that." Like minor spoilers for the season 1. There's an orphanage at one point that you go to, and I made the 2 people that run it. I gave them each like a quirk. I was like, "Well, if you guys decide to take the story in that direction, I've got something to build on there." Didn't end up in the end, but I gave them.
I was gonna say I have absolutely no memory of this.
My only memory of the big campaign is she's 14.
She's 14.
She's 14.
But
It was maybe the worst crime against accents I've ever done, and I do apologise.
We love a running gag here. But yeah, that was something that I knew I could build on if you guys spotted it, but you didn't, and it's like, that's fine. But everything, I like to make something, everything potentially could be something. Is kind of how I go, like, no matter what you're doing. If the players choose to just like wander off into this, it's not, I haven't got nothing planned. There's one thing that they latched onto and I can then build on.
I like that, and I think especially for Fate that works. Oh, sorry, Emily. That works because it is more collaborative and it is very, like, you can allow it to be very player driven, and I like that.
Alex, I'm coming to you last, Emily, because you're one of the newest GM, and I come to ask Jacinta if she's ever been tempted to GM after all of this.
Do it.
Yeah, Alex, what's your style a bit more like?
So my strength, I feel, very much lies in the long form, because I enjoy, like the being descriptive and building a world and explaining things if they prove relevant, and if player characters have knowledge of a given thing. It's interesting. People talk about the Matt Mercer effect, which is the idea that people who haven't played D&D before watch Critical Role and think that Matt Mercer is the standard as opposed to the gold standard of DMing. But I have the opposite problem, because I kind of already DM like that, if I do say so myself. I remember watching the first episode of Critical Role when it released, and I just, I remember my reaction was like, that's how you do it. Because I was like, yes, this is how you do it. This is my style. And again, because I have an ADHD brain, I'm very good at the big picture, less so on the details. So I have, I will have Emily and Jacinta have both played in campaigns with me for quite extended periods, and so can speak to my propensity for having a throwaway line in episode 1 pay off as a huge twist in episode 50. But then, so, I like that sort of, long plan. I like the, what I call the puppet masters on puppet masters on puppet masters. The players discover, the bandit leader boss, for their 3rd level adventure or whatever. But I know that guy is just, is the lieutenant of a lieutenant of a lieutenant of a lieutenant of the big bad evil guy. But eventually it will lead in that direction. But then that said, I am also capable of improvising and using things that the players do, and I love it when players surprise me like that. There are several stories that I could tell, but that would take a while. But to use one very brief example, Jacinta was playing in a campaign that I was running, and the party they were on a riverboat traveling to a big city, and they stopped for the night at this, like, literally, like, a jetty, like, you know, a jetty and a couple of, you know, tiny little bungalows for bedrooms, you know, sheds for people to stay in, essentially, you know, like, you couldn't even call it a hamlet. There was nothing there. It was just, you know, an excuse for somewhere the players could sleep, really. And then the barbarian, the wonderful half-orc barbarian with an intelligence of 8, says that she wants to go clubbing. And Jacinta's character, called Mage Jacinta, says that she wants to go clubbing with her friend. And in that situation, I'm very much the kind of, like, you know, like, right, I search for clubs. Natural 20. Great, you see all 0 clubs. You know, that because, you know, there are no clubs in this tiny place in the middle of nowhere. But what ended up happening was, well, in fact, that did end up happening. The barbarian rolls a natural 20, and, like, I was getting ready to say, great, you see all 0 clubs. But then Jacinta also rolls a natural 20. And so I was like, okay, you know, 1, I can brush off, but 2, I'll make something for this. So, you know, I describe how they go out, they find this random purple tent in the middle of nowhere and have a great night and, you know, wake up with no hangovers, blah, blah, blah. And then several episodes later, they're traveling along with this caravan on a very long journey, and they've gotten to know some of the people there, and one of the people they've gotten to know is simply called Green Imsa, and the description of, because this is Horde of the Dragon Queen, and the description of her in the module is simply, she's a nice young human woman, but her skin is entirely green, and whenever people ask her about it, she's, you know, very defensive and, you know, doesn't want to talk about it. But Jacinta, being the friendly character and indeed player that she is, befriends Imsa, and eventually builds up her trust enough to be like, so Imsa, why are you green? And Imsa was like, okay, fine, I'll tell you. So there was this purple tent, and you know, I hadn't initially planned that, but that I come up with that idea at some point, and I just remember two of the players at that point, when the instant I say purple tent, just turn to each other and go, the thing. So yes, yeah, I do like to incorporate that sort of thing, but yeah, I worry sometimes because I feel I'm moving very slowly, particularly when I compare myself to other DMs, but yeah, I don't know. It's the style I like, and I feel that long form is a very rewarding one. I just wish that I could be better at one shots than I am. But yeah, that's my style.
We've got a scale, it seems. We've got a scale of Alex's Puppet Masters on Puppet Masters on Puppet Masters. Christian, I won't bring the game module book to the finale. And then me, who's like the other bit of this pyramid, which is, if it's funny, fuck it, let's do it.
I will
also do that on occasion, in fairness.
Yeah,
no, that's the main rule. You can get away with so much shit if you make me laugh.
At the risk of spoiling the D&D campaign that Alex and Emily are in, which we haven't played for ages, I do have a tendency, as you were saying, like that. Well, they rolled 2 natural 20s, so they've got to find something. But I will have a tendency to build a story based on what the players want to do. So if the players decide to make an insight roll, for example, which is a classic insight roll check that the players will always do, even for no reason. But if they make one, I'm like, okay, well, that character wasn't suspicious, but now they are. Like, because you chose to investigate, you got to find something. So the more insight rolls you make, generally, the more tangled the conspiracy of my game becomes. So the players just kind of making their own problems at that point. If they just chilled out.
But Wow, I thought these were supposed to be escapist games. These are fantasy games, Kristen. If you could just trust people, everything would be okay. Whoa.
Yeah, so life lessons in my D&D games. But yeah, that definitely suits the D&D kind of style that I do often worry when I run D&D, that I don't quite capture what D&D is about. Because it definitely suits a kind of like, here's your end goal. How you get there is up to you, but there's a logical through line in some way. Kill the dragon, save the kingdom, whatever. And that's the power fantasy, as opposed to like random shit's happening, which is like less of a power fantasy. You want to feel like you overcame something. I do get a little paranoid when I run D&D that I'm not like fulfilling that.
In fairness, depending on your players, you can very much get. Again, this is I won't tell this story now because it'll be too long. Jacinta will know what I mean. I simply have to say the words neckgate to remind us of an incident that, because one of the players did something completely unexpected, it completely shifted my entire plans. But it still all worked out in the end. Indeed, very, very long story short, a player doing something completely crazy and out of left field that I didn't expect led to Jacinta's character getting a love interest.
Chandra.
So I feel like we're brushing past the fact that Jacinta chose to create a character who is a party animal and call her Mage Jacinta. I feel like, look, I'm not going to roast you, Jacinta, but can I ask what was going on there?
So basically, my friend Mark, he like writes he does like lots of RPG stuff as well, and he paints figures. When I was a child, he gave me a figure that was called Mage Jacinta, and I used to play that. So when Alex was my first ever GM, which is, I'm very lucky about that, because I mean he's amazing. But I was like, I want to play that. I want to play that character. So I insisted on being Mage Jacinta, and then from then on, there's now been a running joke that every D&D campaign I play, I have to play someone who sounds basically like my name.
Yeah. The campaign that I was in with Jacinta, her character's name was Jess Inder.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Like first name Jess, surname Inder.
Into the pond. And then another game I played, I was Jim Cinder, the ranger. So there we go. That's the story behind that.
Once again, Jacinta proves that she will always commit to a bit.
Yeah.
Right man.
It's gone 9 if anybody wants to bow. I did say we'd finish about 9, but if anyone wants to bow out there, you're welcome to head off to your nighttime activities, whatever they may be. No judgments here.
Just
I want to hear about
and if you're hanging about
Emily,
Emily, I'd love to hear. Because you just recently started DMing for Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Yeah. So I mean, basically, I run the same way that I play, which is I come at it from a very much an actor standpoint. So I create characters. I know what their motivation is. I have very specific knowledge of who they are, how they sound like, what they do. And then just, oh, you want a plot? Oh, okay. I guess, well, the players do something, and then I'll just, react to what you do. And like the enemy will come in and be like, yes, this is what I want. This is what my plan for taking over the world. Mwahaha. Oh, you want to solve that problem? Oh, I don't know how you're going to do it, but that's on you. That's a you problem.
Suggest something, and maybe it'll work.
Yeah, it's very much character driven more than having a big plan in my head.
It's definitely popular kind of style, I think, at the moment, because of Critical Role and all those things like Alex was saying about Matt Mercer. And I can see I've played with Alex a lot, but I haven't had a game run by him. But I can see that you would be quite Matt Mercery in your style. I can definitely see that. because when you're in the zone, as it were, you're very committed, kind of in a great way. As like it's kind of the ideal player. Oh, the cat's back. What do you want now? Do you want me to move the mouse so you can lie on the mouse pad again? So I can see that. Right, he's down. But yeah, that's definitely then been popularized by the kind of the voice actor craze amongst the actual play popularity.
Yeah, I mean, as the old saying goes, acting.
Assign the rest of us GMs. Assign the rest of us GMs sodas. I mean, Emily, you saying like character driven just very much reminds me of Brennan Lee Mulligan and how he runs, where his campaigns tend to be very short and they are very like, okay, this is a story about these characters. It's not really a story that could be played. Like the problems might come up for other characters, but this is a story that can only be solved by this group of heroes. And I really like that as a style.
I think I'm better at tying
Yeah, basically, it's very much. Yeah, sort of Brennan Mulligan and Unprepared Casters, the podcast as well, does this really well, where the plot only exists because of the characters who are there. Like whoever is running the game will be like, okay, this is genre that we're going to go for. And then, I mean, it's all the collaborative thing, like Fate. That's what I like about role-playing games, is that everyone then brings something to the table. And then, in that case, sort of the DM goes, oh, okay, so you're this person, you brought this, I can make something with this. Rather than coming to it with their own story and then trying to fit people in, just making it out of you have to. I think that's what I find interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I really like that.
Yeah.
It feels a lot more personal when that's happening as well. It feels like the character decisions that you make as a player really matter.
Yeah. And I mean, Alex, in lockdown, Alex ran the D&D game for me and Jacinta and a few other of my friends. And it was like, in that time, when we couldn't leave our houses, we couldn't see anyone. And then I came up with this really stupidly intricate backstory, and I gave it to Alex. And like the best gift he could have given me was like, he gave me an arc that was about my character. And it was like her having to confront her family and seeing her sister for the first time in a year. And like, it like broke me, and like all the catharsis of like, I don't want to go too deep and be like, oh yes, the catharsis of, I couldn't see my sister, but I can see my sister in D&D. Like, it was so good because it was never something that he could have created on his own. But because it was that true collaboration, it was just something really nice.
That sounds really lovely.
That was really cool.
I would die for Natalia Olbridge. Sorry, Blacksire.
Would you?
But I know what you mean.
Would you die for fake Natalia Olbridge?
No, Alana Vincent can go die.
Whoever said fake Natalia Olbridge was Alana Vincent.
Anyway,
would you?
But I know what you mean, Emily. I feel like we did a lot of recording of Vicky's World, and that was built out of the fact that we wanted to record it live. We had an offer from a radio station to do like a D&D show, which is from my friend Talal, who's like an amazing like musician among other things. But we all wanted to play together, and we'd all done live shows together of like playing loads of different silly RPGs, and it was something that obviously when lockdown happened, I mean, you guys, not to get too personal or anything, but lots of us are performers. It wasn't exactly the best time. And so to be able to like get on Zoom every week with a load of people that make each other laugh, and to be able to just do that really silly role playing and yes-anding and supporting, but in a way that also concluded in a kind of structured storyline way that made it feel like the world was changed and the choices they made matter, and to be able to enable that in my players, I really liked as sort of a space where, man, we couldn't do live shows, we couldn't do live comedy, but we did that, and that was really lovely. So yeah, I think that really shaped my GMing, and that hadn't occurred to me, Emily, until you said sort of that was a reflection of your own game. That's really nice.
Yeah.
So Jacinta, you coming to be a GM? You going to come and
Yes,
run
have
Fate?
you thought about it at all?
I kind of have a long running idea. I'd love to do like a murder mystery campaign set in a fantasy university. But I have nowhere to go from there.
You don't have to. Just create a lot of suspects.
Yeah.
And then whoever your players think it is the one who did it. Sorry, I'm giving away all my secrets.
That's it. I mean, yeah. I mean, the suspects would all be based on my university professors, obviously. But like,
There would be Mage Jacinta, Jacinda.
And Jim Cinder. But I think I've obviously done a few different RPG games now and worked with different GMs, and like there's something really special in all of them and how they're all quite different. But I think Alex being my first GM, I really, really appreciate the sort of long form, like everything comes back and it was kind of like being sort of put into a series of fantasy novels where the writer like everything is going to have a purpose, and there was something really kind of satisfying about that. And so I think I do now kind of, that's sort of my personal bar, is like, oh, I want to make something where everything will like make sense. But then it's actually been really useful hearing all this conversation and kind of remembering that I also enjoy like other forms where it's like, actually maybe like not every single thing has to lead everywhere, and also you need to leave space for the players to kind of move the story and inform the story as well. So I don't know, maybe at some point I'd like to, but not tomorrow.
Oh, I'm gonna
You
say
could run
we're
a
gonna
fake
set
game
up a
tomorrow.
live stream for tomorrow, right?
Got you.
Oh yeah, okay. See you tomorrow.
First time running online in front of millions. You have a million viewers, right, Christian?
Millions, sure, why not?
I did.
Yeah.
I did also the other day someone had Blood on the Clock Tower, and I was like, I've played loads of Blood on the Clock Tower and I've seen Christian do it, so I can be the storyteller. And then like it was the hardest thing I've ever done, and I messed up so many times and we had to stop playing. So
Yeah, but the nice thing about being a GM or a storyteller is you're right. At the end of the day, whatever you say is right, which is a heady thing.
True.
Like, as long as you're not being a dick to your players, I think it's totally fun just to be like, it's like that because the world's like that, because it's my world. Now let's get on.
I think that to some degree with
Yes,
like
I like that.
the hardcore kind of rules players who are like, no, I want like a properly crafted challenge. Like that's fundamentally not how the game works. Like I mentioned it in one of my other videos, there's a reason that the Necromancer summoned 4 undead giants instead of 50. It's because you can handle 4, you can't handle 50. If he was genuinely trying to defend his tower, he'd have summoned 50 because he knows that will kill you. But the game has to let you win, or has to be the option of winning. So you you can't pretend that there has to be like a strict logic to the world, because otherwise you would just lose, because it doesn't make any sense.
And it's also like as a there's so many tropes and jokes about DMs versus players, and long-suffering DMs of players, like guys, you are ruining my story. But like I always say that because the DM can indeed, particularly in D&D, but in so many other RPGs, can just make it up as they go along. A DM can say rocks fall, everybody dies. The DM can say like, right, an ancient black dragon lands in front of your level 3 party. Roll initiative. Wait, can't we talk our way out of it? No, roll initiative. Oh, you're all dead. Roll new characters. That's just not that's just not good storytelling. Like, what's the point? Yes, like the DM can easily, kill the players whenever they like, but again, it's like playing through a game with invincibility on. It's like, what's the point? There's no challenge.
Yeah, but you're a hardcore speedrunner.
Well, no, yeah.
I will roast you. I will roast you live on the internet.
Please go right ahead. But as in, yeah, it's as you were saying.
But he does it honestly, no cheat modes.
Yeah, I do it glitchless actually. But yeah, it's like, why are we fighting 4 giants and not 50? Because fighting 50 isn't fun, because they'll kill you all.
I also think that players don't realise that a lot of times that their GM is fudging things. They're fudging things to make them harder because they underestimated the players. Like, I'm continually underestimating players, so I'm making things harder. I'm not making things easier. I want to give them a challenge. Like, it turns out that NPC betrayed you. Yes, I planned that all along. It wasn't because you were having too easy of a time and I wanted someone to stab you in the back.
As a player, you definitely want that feeling of achievement and overcoming a challenge. And I think in some ways that should come before realism in a story. It's interesting. I think that there is a fair amount of give and take in regards to how much of a rule stickler you should be as a DM and how much rule stickling you allow your players to do. And this is we're talking about D&D now, but we can actually be talking about any tabletop. And I think actually Fate works quite well for this because a Fate point is incredibly powerful, and you can use it if you use it incorrectly, in my opinion, to fuck up the game and completely destroy everyone's fun because it removes a challenge. So it's up to the GM to put some limits on what a fate point can do, what this can do, what that can do. And I feel like that creates a very interesting challenge for a player to be able to sort of place their influence on the story in the right place. But I also very much feel like if a player wants to do a stupid thing with a spell, I'll let it happen, but I'll let it happen once. You get one. After that, it doesn't happen because it's not funny to happen. But genuinely, and I think that in a certain moment, it's sort of like when the heroes escape the explosion at the end of the movie, or like Jack Sparrow walking off the sinking ship, or they all toboggan to victory. But it just so happens that can't ever happen again, and that makes it really special and fun. So I think there's something to be said about the exclusivity of how they solve a problem.
Yeah. And you hear a lot of stories, you see a lot of kind of memes of players like using spells, particularly spells in a like a weirdly overpowered way. I don't really have a problem with that because my characters have spells.
Yeah, I think that's hilarious. You can do it once.
You want to fuck with me? I can do the exact same thing that you just did. If I want to.
A friend of mine is very good at building characters and is very good at quote unquote breaking the system. So when he had, a high-level fighter sorcerer multi-class that with various magical items and spells could theoretically get up to an armor class of 28, I responded by literally throwing him into hell.
I mean, that's great. You can't dodge hell if it's coming directly at you because of gravity.
I thought you were going to say you built a clone to face him, and it was his evil twin. I've got all the same mix as you, baby.
No, the devil in question just got really pissed, and because the character was a dex fighter, not a strength fighter, he picked him up, threw him into an open portal. I gave him a charisma save a la banishment, natural 1. Bye-bye, you're going to Avernus.
I will say in going back in the conversation a tiny bit, but in defense of my methodology and possibly as a little confidence booster for just into there, you can always retroactively make logic out of the things that have already happened. You don't have to you don't have to have all of your lore. You can just have here's little bits that the players were interested in. Just tie them all together, and suddenly that's your lore.
Mm-hmm.
I do that all
the
time.
I think that's more fun. I like that.
Yeah, I like that.
I think that that's some advice that Matt Mercer has given is don't start with a world, start with a town, or start with a village, and then build out to the local the town, then build out to the county or the province or whatever, and then build out to the country, blah 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 blah. And it really is. Even though I GM professionally and people pay me for it, I still on a daily basis both use the gif of Grommet building the train tracks in front of him as the train's running along from the wrong trousers. I still use that gif both literally and as and when I'm saying, yep, no, it really does feel like this sometimes. And that's fine.
The irony of what I do, I think, is that because I have often I'll have something planned up to a point, and then I'll be like, there's what I've thought of. Now I need the players to suggest something that will spark something that, like, to get the back and forth. But I will often, not often, but like sometimes it definitely has happened. It happens in this series 1 of the Fate show, a few times. We will get to that point, and then the players or player will be staring blankly at me, waiting for the next thing to happen. And I'm like, I'm not sitting there like, in my head, I'm like going, no, this is your turn, for lack of a, like, now you get to do something, because I don't know what happens next. And if they like genuinely are drawing a blank, which is perfectly fine, then I have to start like pushing more and more, and I end up railroading them a little bit, or like end up like dominating this. I worry that I end up dominating the story a little bit too much, because we've gone past the point where I thought they were going to take over. So yeah, that can happen with mine. Sometimes you can give the players too much freedom, and they just kind of like deer in the headlights kind of situation can happen. It didn't happen a lot on series 1. I think I could think of 2 times off the top of my head that it happened. Well, I just had to like.
I think I remember happening to me in the final battle, where, I mean, again, I don't want to give any spoilers. Don't do the talk back for that now.
Nope.
But like, there was a moment where I was just like, I mean, I literally have. I can't do any. What can I do? And then I would just like had nothing. And then Christian was like, "How about this?" And I was like, "Yes, that is what I want to do."
I think that's really cool, and I think that I totally see where you're coming from. I feel like systems like Fate enable you to do that thing where you make a choice and then you make it matter. Sorry, it's like, I don't know if I'm making sense, but in effect, like the fact that Emily, you had built, no spoilers, but a character that was a social character, right? And you were exceptional in social circumstances, but the final battle is a battle, right? And hey, you guys know I play Bard a lot. I have definitely been, and that is one of the massive downsides, I think, of D&D, where sometimes you just got to support heal. Now, the fact that I'm very good at it is a factor that we should consider, but you end up pigeonholing yourself in a way and limiting your own choices, when actually, if you're in a combat situation and you've got these like little fractions of godhood, you've got these little tokens that enable you to become the storyteller for a moment, giving yourself that chance as a player to be like, actually, do you know what? I can trust myself to make this decision, and I could also trust, and I don't think, like, I'm not talking about any specific instances, or I actually think we all trust each other really well on both these games. But the, like, being able to trust that your fellow players will be like, that's so cool, that's a great, the fact you made a choice, and then your GM and your fellow players are going to make it matter. I think that is the core of a lot of what we're talking about. And just having briefly looked at the chat, the idea of the DM accepting all these lovely backstories and then completely ignoring it and telling the story they want to tell is so frustrating, because it just ends up being so, it's just anathema to collaboration. And I feel like that also gives you the freedom to make more choices. I felt at the start of our big campaign, more than the skeleton crew actually, I felt almost concerned, Christian, to establish something in the lore, because I was like, oh well, he keeps referring to it as like the main campaign, it's season 1, so we must have a big overarching thing. And it took me a little while to be like, oh, but actually it meant that it was really cool to be able to direct it and be like, you know, when you're improvising a song, you have often different people who come in and do the different verses. You might have somebody who like does a bridge. Obviously, your musician's giving you the hints about where you should be and what your time signature is, and actually doing all the hard work and not just thinking of 2 rhymes to put myself on blast. But the easiest way to make sure that you have a big cool finale is having a chorus leader, and whoever comes forward and sings the chorus, everybody snaps and attends, and then they are the person that you look to at the end. And the way that you all know how the song ends and the way that you all know what dance moves to do is because you look to the chorus leader. And I feel like, Christian, your vibe as a DM is very much the chorus leader. Like, everyone could do their individual verses, we're all singing the same song, and then just at the end we all look to you and be like, hey, what's our final note like? Because we're all singing your chorus, and you've taken aspects of our verses. But how's the choreography over there? And Christian's just...
That's such a good... Yeah, that makes...
There was choreography.
Really
okay.
I think I get you. Oh, that's cool. That's a good interesting way of looking at it. I'm just scanning through the chat. I think there is an element of that we've touched on. A few of us touched on a few times here that D&D makes players very afraid of failure, whereas like a system, particularly a system as fluid as Fate, that you can't be that. You've just got to do something. And it's gonna have a payoff. It's gonna, the scene will conclude, because it's quite hard to die in Fate. Like it's very this game's designed for you to have quite a lot of plot armor, because your characters are the main characters of the story. They are they are the most important people in this world. Like it would be weird for James Bond to die in a Bond film. It can happen. Spoilers for at least one Bond film.
And the main Fate crew plot, where
but like you
James Bond turns up and then we murder him.
Spoilers.
It happens actually in the background. Sorry,
I
should have mentioned, but in the background of the third episode, you can't see it in the narrative, but if you concentrate really hard on imagining what we're talking about, James Bond turns up in his Aston Martin and then Dr. Patience Wispy just absolutely beats the shit out of him.
But in D&D,
in the background.
in D&D, there absolutely are right and wrong answers, and death can occasionally be so arbitrary. That it really makes the players afraid of making wrong choices. I think. I think they get over it eventually, but like it does put you, I think, a little bit in that mindset that there are wrong choices. Whereas, like if you're playing a more story-led game, there's definitely choices that will turn out worse for your character than others. But that's fine. That's fine. That's how. Yeah. That's just how the story goes.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, Emily.
I think also... Sorry. Oh, go for it. Sorry.
No, it's just... I was just going to say...
Oh, I don't know.
I was just...
You speak.
Right, roll initiative,
more about the story than about the stats. So, yeah, anyway, sorry, carry on, Emily.
No, I was just going to say, like, the thing with D&D is, because it's been around for so long and there's such specific lore for it, that also tends to sometimes work against it, where like you have some players who are like, okay, well, I know that I should never make a pact because they'll be bad. Warlocks are not to be trusted. This item that we found is definitely going to be cursed. And like all these rules they have. And then sometimes it's just like, no, I'm a person in this world. I don't know these tropes. Like, I found this magic ring. Yeah, sure. Why not put it on? Because it's more fun that way. And then you have some players who are like, no, never do this. I'm having flashbacks to our home game. I'm sorry, Christian and Alex. Of just so many times. Of just being like, no, don't do that. I'm like, we're making a story. It'll be fun.
Well, I mean, that I think just comes...
My character in that is so screwed. She is not in for a good time, but I am.
I mean, I think that just comes down to players playing their characters well. Or, like, not metagaming and, having other players and having the GM call people out for being like, I search for traps, natural 1. Cave mouth seems perfectly fine. I'm not going in. And then having like, no, just having people go, no, that's no. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
But then
I think also there's an element
I could play
of trust in your GM as well.
True. Sorry, I feel like I could play devil's advocate for D&D all night, but let's not do that.
You're on the wrong channel, Alex.
Well, I haven't played with D&D players who do that kind of meta thinking since I was teaching it at a board game cafe, which are largely sort of new players, a lot of teenagers, and there's a lot of it's hard to ignore that meta thing. If I rolled a 1, they'd say, "Oh, everything's fine." Like, well, probably isn't, is it? So they're like, "Can somebody else check?" Like, well, that's sort of like, yes, mechanically that makes sense, but like, it's just sort of it's trying to get into that. But yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. Like, obviously, none of you guys, I wouldn't expect you guys to run with that, and none of my players that I have at the moment would they would always lean into a fail. And sometimes a fail is I will just say, oh yeah, there's definitely like something about, I would give information as if they had passed, and then they don't know what to think. Because because that's
I love
the sort
that.
of a way around it. Or if there's something's fine, just tell them that everything's not fine, and then like wild. Yeah.
That's so evil.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. I'm
Yeah.
stealing that. Thank you. Yoink. I also feel like there's a level of trust. Sorry, I interrupted Alex to say it, but like the longer you play as a group, or the clearer you are with your expectations for your players at the start of your game, the safer they feel immersing themselves in those moments of failure. Like, we never want to read or watch or experience stories of heroes who win all the time. Like, if taking the ring to Mordor was easy, we wouldn't enjoy the story. And I feel like you need to have that level of, like, I mentioned it in session 0 because I play a lot with kids, and that was how I paid rent over lockdown, was running games for kids. And like young adults and teenagers, they really take failures personally, and they really think, and their friends do not help by going, why did you roll so rubbish? And I'm like, they didn't choose to. And so I think that's really helped me run games for adults, where actually you need to make it really explicit right at the start, whatever game you're playing, that a failure is not a failure on behalf of the player. It's just an opportunity for a different story beat. And actually, we celebrate moments of failure because they're character moments. Succeeding at that awesome, like, death blow to the dragon is just as cool as at the last second getting snapped up in its jaws. The tension is there. It's just better for a character survivability for one to happen than the other, but not necessarily better for the story.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. It's engaging. And so, like, being able to emphasize and having to emphasize to some of my younger players, who actually do really well, but having to emphasize to them, like, if you roll low numbers, it's not because you're bad at this game, and it's not because you're playing it wrong. It's just the dice has given us, we've got 2 or more avenues, and it said we're going left, not right. And let's see what's left, because it actually might be more interesting. If you just succeed at everything, it's boring. And so I feel like lessons I wish I could teach adults as easily as I can say to children. I was going to say teach children, but in this heat wave, I'm not sure anything goes in.
The most memorable rolls are the 20s and the 1s, not the ones in between.
Yeah, not the nice efficient rolls of everything else is nice and efficient, but like the failures and the massive failures and the massive successes. What are you doing, little face in the corner there? Look at your face.
Yeah. I don't know, man. You placed me in the corner over here.
Oh, Vic, little Vic, look, little Vic over there. Oh, look at him. With your microphone. Have you got a microphone?
Yes, I have.
Why is he always phoning me up?
And thus,
This is why we could be married with 3 hours of playing with each other.
I was going to say, and thus the heat-induced madness claims us all.
That too.
No, I think Dr. Patience Whiffsby, if she proves anything other than how incredibly efficient Soviet training is, it's that we've always been like this.
No one puts Whiffsby in the corner.
True. Or if you do and you take your eye off her for 1 second, you won't live long enough to regret it.
Well.
And on that note.
Yeah, on that note, yeah. We've gone over our allotted time by about 40 minutes, but that was a fun discussion. And I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I mean, it was allotted by you.
I know, I have control. This is my channel. I do what I want.
You have the power.
But yeah, no, it's been really nice to have you guys on. We should do it again for the big show and for all the other things we're doing. I'm still, Jacinta and Alex, I am in the process of editing This War of Mine, if you remember when we played that.
Yes. I do. We started to play the next part.
we played, that is like, the problem with that is it's like 6 hours of footage, and we played 1 chapter of that game.
Yeah, I know.
The first turn lasted, or the first round is like an hour and a half, because we're always doing it, we're explaining it as we go. But yeah, that was a fun game. Yeah, I am, now that I've been rewatching it, re-editing it, I'm like, this game's really good.
I really want to finish it.
That was the cat. The cat just moved Vic.
Vic, where are you going?
The cat moved you with its tail. It managed to click the mouse and move the mouse with its tail.
This cat's powerful.
It's like you're trying to replace me in Christian's affections in order to get free food and no rent. Curses. I've been
Oh,
rumbled.
imagine if you could do that. I mean, it'd be a weird relationship, but
That would be very weird. I think I just live on your sofa and just that is a thing. It's called having a roommate. Well, we've solved the housing crisis, everybody.
yes,
You're welcome.
Become a
Good night.
roommate who doesn't pay rent and steals everyone else's food, and then it's a weirdly cheap way to live.
I'm gonna tell my flatmate that.
Ah, cool. Well, yeah, lovely to talk to you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Likewise.
It's been nice.
Hopefully we can meet up in person again before too long.
Yes.
And
Please.
I will sign us off here. Good night. Thank you for everyone joining us in the chat. Sorry we couldn't
Thank
engage
you.
more. Kaylee was monitoring the chat for us. Lights Down Production is Kaylee, my other half. But yeah, thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching. This is my channel. We've got a donation page, the Ko-fi no donations page. I'll put a link somewhere below. We are currently trying to put some money together to get some gear. The place that I used to work for, which we used to get all our camera gear from, collapsed. Not literally, but like in a company kind of way. And they are auctioning off all their old equipment. So I'm trying to put some cash together to buy it. So we'd have basically all the equipment that we had on the show for like a massively discounted price. And I know it works because it's the exact same equipment that I would be buying. So jump on the Ko-fi page to have a look at that. But yeah, other than that, like and subscribe, and we appreciate all of your support. I'm really enjoying making this channel work, and I hope you're enjoying it too. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
I need to get the cat's tail out of the way so I can actually click on. Look, it's moved the background now.
MacGyver.
You moved the background.
MacGyver.